I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and welcome to another Rapid Fire Review, a format where I try to give a brief overview of a game and tell you what I think about it in 10 minutes or less. Today we are going to be covering the Isle of Cats Duel from City of Games, from Frank West and the City of Games. This is a two-player dual version of the Isle of Cats, a game that has a base game, multiple expansions. It has the Isle of Cats Explore and Draw, and now it has the Isle of Cats Duel. The basic premise of this, and I guess the Isle of Cats universe in general, is you have a boat. You're going to have your two boats over here for the two players, the dual aspect. We're going to have an island where we are drafting cards from, and ultimately we're trying to gather, well, cards and polyominoes. We're trying to gather these cats and place them onto our boats in order to cover up various sections of the board in order to get a bunch of scoring mechanisms. You're going to be trying to cover up rooms because you're going to lose 5 points for each different room that is left uncovered completely, so you want to cover those up. You want to cover up rats in your boat because rats, they're worth -1 point each, so nicely covering a bunch of rats will be very helpful. You want to try to build cat families. Groupings of cats of the same color that are touching each other will be worth a larger and larger number of points. For a size of 3, you'll have 8, 4, 11, 5, and 15, and for each additional size, you'll get additional +5. Scoring large groupings of the same color is very helpful. And then lastly, you have these lesson cards. These blue cards over here that you're going to be gathering from the island. Oh, we're missing a little cat over here. Those blue cards, lesson cards, will give you a bunch of points as well. That's basically what you're trying to do. As far as how do you actually do this, well, in the Isle of Cats Duel, what you're going to be doing is playing out across 4 rounds. In each round, you're going to seed the island, and then players are going to take turns drafting various things from the island in order to either put them on the boat or gain those cards. You're going to play across 4 rounds. At the end of each round, you're going to add this round counter, these cats, to the bag, and then refill the island, rinse and repeat until the game is over. The way you're going to do that is you're going to move the Oshax cat 1 or 2 spaces, following the footsteps. So for example, 1, 2, and then you take any one thing on the island that the cat interacted with. So I can go ahead and gather this and put it out onto my boat if I want, or anything else that the Oshax cat interacted with. The next player goes, and they go ahead and again move it 1, 2, following various footsteps, and again take things. So you can see as you're moving around the island, you have a bunch of options at first, but it will get less and less option-y, I guess, as you take things off the island. And you may even find yourself towards the end where half the island is gone, there's this piece left over here, your piece is over here, and you actually might have a hard time getting across the island. That's where you can actually use various abilities over here. You can use fish tokens that you'll earn. You'll start the game with some. You can take various cats that will give you fish tokens, and you can spend those fish tokens to move an extra space, 2 fish tokens to jump anywhere, 2 fish tokens to take 1 treasure, and then 3 fish tokens to choose 1 extra discovery, taking 2 things on your turn instead of 1. You're going to use this pattern of trying to move the Oshax cat and then take something that it interacted with to fill your boat, trying to prioritize both filling up the boat itself as well as taking all the various cards that will help you, from things that will give you treasures to one-time use abilities to these lesson cards that will give you extra ways of scoring points. 7 points if you have 1 or more of each color cat touching the edge of your boat. That's an extra 7 points if we do that thing. That is how you play the Isle of Cats Duel. You are going back and forth, drafting these polyomino cats, placing them into your boat, and then seeing who does so better than the other players. Let's go ahead and dive into the review aspect, starting off with, am I keeping this game? And the short answer is no, I'm not. Why or why not am I keeping this game? Why or why not am I keeping or not keeping the game? And the short answer here is, while Isle of Cats Duel has a good drafting mechanism, this little board over here, that does force you to consider where you're moving the cat and what things are there along the way, ultimately I'd say my biggest critique is simply that it doesn't do enough new to differentiate itself from Isle of Cats Explore and Draw, which is the current Isle of Cats game that I own and enjoy. I think Explore and Draw is an excellent implementation of the Isle of Cats universe, and there are some things that Duel does differently, both the actual drafting mechanism and then also the fact that you're playing with tactile polyomino pieces, which many of you may prefer over drawing little things onto your Explore and Draw boat. So that does a few things new, but not enough to justify owning this one, and I think the flexibility of Explore and Draw and the higher player count makes that one a more compelling game for my collection personally. As far as other similar games that you might be interested in, first of all, Isle of Cats Explore and Draw. I think this kind of hits the same main notes, and so I think it's mainly a question of, if you're getting this game primarily for 2, you might want this one, but if you want something similar in the Isle of Cats universe, I definitely recommend checking out Explore and Draw. And secondly, if you want a 2-player polyomino drafting game, definitely check out Patchwork. That's going to be an oldie but a goodie, a classic in this genre. As far as a counter opinion, it's not a game I'm keeping. What about for you? Is it for you? Is it not? The first and main thing is ultimately this is a good game that takes advantage of the foundation that Isle of Cats has built. That foundation of drafting cats that are adorable to begin with, placing them onto your boat, trying to be mindful of covering up the rooms. You do have different sides to your boat, so you could go ahead and use different patterns on these boats if you want a slightly different variation. And it does this drafting mechanism on the island that forces you to consider what other players want and where you're drafting the cat or moving the Oshax, possibly taking things out of range, trying to be mindful of your fish supply and the extra abilities you get from that. So overall, this does a bunch of things well. Overall, it's a good game that's enjoyable that builds on the Isle of Cats foundation. For me personally, the biggest issue is just that I don't think it does enough differently from Explore and Draw, and so that's the one that I'm personally going to hold on to and keep. But if you don't have Explore and Draw and you do want something like this is definitely a good and enjoyable game. As far as final thoughts and rating, for me, I'm going to give this a 3.5 out of 5. It's a good game. I've had fun playing with it, but ultimately the main question I have is who the target audience is. Is the target audience an Isle of Cats fan who already has a different game in the Isle of Cats universe, in which case I'm not sure if it's different enough. Again, for Explore and Draw, I think the main reason you might want this is if you want that tactile aspect, or if you're specifically compelled by the drafting mechanism from the island, or alternatively, if you have the Isle of Cats base game, you might be compelled by the smaller box size and travelability, but otherwise you could still play Isle of Cats at 2 players. And this, again, will be different, and I think slightly better if you're playing it just as 2, but not necessarily largely different. So I'm having a hard time figuring out if the target audience is someone who already enjoys and owns an Isle of Cats game, or possibly a better entry point to the Isle of Cats universe to someone who doesn't own one of the existing games. But overall, a 3.5 out of 5 for me, a good and enjoyable game, but not one that does enough differently for me to justify owning myself. In any case, then until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.